Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching the Front Row with me, Abi Agina. Our hashtag for this conversation is Front Row. Thank you so far for your feedback on our Twitter handles at KT News KE, at Agina Abi, at Akisa Wandera. I have a question here from one of our viewers watching us here in Nairobi, Murithi Lawrence. He's saying there's a thin line between what the government calls efforts to ensure its budget source to ensure no deficits and what you are talking about, easing taxation. For startups and SMEs, how do we achieve a proper mix with the government and the other stakeholders pulling on different directions? Will we achieve reduced taxation on startups? Interesting question there. I'd like Honorable Siani to just make his comments, because I promise that when we come back from our break, you'll be issuing a rejoinder to Victor's point.
No, I mean, Victor spoke, of course, very elaborately about the taxation issues which is being raised there, and which I'm not the authority to address, because that falls under the purview strictly of the Treasury, Ministry of Planning, under the very able CS Ambassador Ukuri Atani. Of course, our tax regime may not be the worst, but definitely, as we all know, the hugest room on earth is the room for improvement. There have been moments when other countries have borrowed from our models. There are times when we may need to borrow from other models, and we are constantly trying to relook at this and see, is there a way of making it better? And we hope to get to a point where the whole country appreciates that we have improved on our taxation policy, you know, and enhanced it to a point everyone appreciates it, especially in a way that it is favorable a lot more to the micro and small enterprise sector. However, Victor also alluded to the conflict in policy, pointing to the example of us saying that we want to promote the cottage industry, but also having the special economic zones, to which I will respond and say, listen, the special economic zones and the cottage industry are not mutually exclusive. It doesn't mean they cannot coexist. Actually, we look forward to having the mega companies setting up in the special economic zones as a very great channel for knowledge and skills transfer, which is what will give birth to the desire in micro and small enterprises to run in a small way some of these sectors. You do not want to say that because Del Monte exists, for example, a small cottage industry cannot be started in Mumias to do juices, you know, to do sugar and beetroot juice for that market. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And so we want to have the balance. You also have to be alive to the fact of the globalization issues and how we are constantly moving towards a more globalized world, borderless, running away from protectionism, even though, of course, we understand there are moments when a bit of protectionism helps to support ingrown businesses and upcoming businesses. But away from that, I want us to appreciate that Mr. Matonda spoke, for example, about the delegation which I was privileged to lead on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary to Egypt, where we went to seek markets. When we talk about supporting the SMEs, I look at it as, what do we do, even if it is not directly towards the SMEs, but that has an eventual knock-off effect on the SMEs. When you say that we have curfew, but then you allow trucks to be on the road that have, you know, clearance to move cargo or to move produce from one point to another, you have impacted on the SMEs that probably do maize in a small way by necessitating the movement of these goods. When we look for markets like Keproba is constantly doing for our produce and speaking to Kenyans to look for alternative markets, then whereas the SME itself may not be the eventual exporter, they are at the very bottom of the export chain. Yes. And that is how we improve on it. While in Egypt, we were able to secure grants that will be channeled strictly to micro and small enterprises through the Chamber of Commerce, and which will be vetted by the ministry to ensure that you don't end up giving these grants to people who don't deserve, which is what has happened with the Kenya Youth Employment Opportunities Project, KEOP, which looked at the various SMEs doing businesses across the country, either as individuals or as outfits, and supported them to the tune of almost 3,900,000, and the very small ones at 40,000 shillings in every cycle. This is run by the Micro Small Enterprise Authority.
Yeah.
But I also want our listeners to go out and seek, as we speak about Micro and Small Enterprise Authority, log into their website and check out what is it they're doing. The ministry worked with KEPSA, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, on an e-commerce booster program. I remember sharing it, and about 12 people came back and said, we benefited from it, to train people, because you heard Victor saying, we have moved towards the digitech. You know, a lot more startups are in that space. The owners of money is headed that way. And the world is moving towards digitization. It's a big thing. Renewable energy is going to be the next big thing. But how do we take advantage of a digitizing world to do business on digital platforms? Because everybody is on Facebook. You will not give excuse for not selling your produce just because government did not give you funds yet.
Tax break.
If you had only put it on that platform, there'd be a chance of getting a buyer.
All right.
So all these multiple approaches towards supporting our SMEs are in place. They continue even today.
Thank you. Victor, please hold your thought, because we now want to get into the penultimate stage of our conversation.
Yeah.
I'd like to bring in Mr. Matonda. Well, very noble acts of various interventions, and perhaps as we close, I'd like to get your closing comments, especially on what next is the chamber doing, especially when it comes to ensuring that the businesses continue surviving in this very harsh environment.
Thank you, Abby. It's important to note that in the SME, because the agenda was on SME, the SME really face very few challenges when clustered together. One is a lack of affordable finance to support them, and of course access to markets, and of course information and skills transfer. And looking at those three, I want to talk about market access. What we are doing, like especially for the women in trade, we have a platform that we're being supported by the Trademark East Africa, which is about to be rolled out, and that's targeting the SMEs who are able to put their products on the same platform and be able to access global markets. When it comes to access to financing through our stakeholders and members who are financial institutions, we are availing affordable credit through the partnership that we've had with the banks like Equity, who set aside 200 billion shillings to assist our members and our SMEs.
All right.
And we are working very closely with the government so that we are able to really influence policy, and we played a role in the development of the guidelines to ease the guidelines and the protocols, so that we are able to allow our members to partake and participate in trade. So basically that's what I could say in a nutshell. But
Thank you.
As I repeat again, I'm disadvantaged that I joined later.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. And believe that. All right. Well, we'll be engaging with you, of course, in the near future, and thank you for taking part in the discussion. Let me take it to Mr. Victor Otieno to wrap up on his end in less than a minute. What should define a post-COVID recovery period for Kenya?
I think I would refer us back to the World Bank report on informality, and based on the recommendations that they have in terms of supporting SMEs with 79% being informal. So income support, social protection through either cash grant, etc., and getting a register of SMEs which can be able to act as a gateway to intervention. But I think, Abby, you should give me just a second.
In less than 30 seconds. We need to wrap it up.
So there's a World Bank study that studied special economic zones, and they looked at Vietnam and China. Vietnam focused on getting FDI in terms of just getting a special economic zone, getting investors to invest. What came out of that study is there is no backward linkage towards smaller businesses. So the investor would come, manufacture, and export with no backward linkages to small businesses, as compared to China, which was more localized, where the government would look for big markets and have the special economic zones run with ecosystem locally. That was able to have a ripple effect in terms of supporting SMEs. Okay. So that was my point.
Thank you for that point. Osian, I know you talk a lot. You're passionate about reform and change.
There's so much to say.
Exactly. In just under a minute, what will define the next set of months for you in office and, of course, for the Kenyan economy and the SMEs?
Let me get back to the words of Victor. He refers to the World Bank report on informality. And I'm a big person on never internationalizing policy without looking at context. Context informs everything. Our context is that we are not as highly organized as we would wish to be. And the net effect is that maybe getting to implement the proposals by the World Bank report on the informal sector may be a bit too steep, yet it's not entirely impossible. I look forward to the successes in projects such like the Kenya Young Employment Opportunities Project that has looked at the SMEs and the young people running the SME sector and how it can be supported. I look at, having successes with the initiatives started by banks such as Stanbic and Equity in giving grants and supporting SMEs by training. I look at having successes with getting, markets through Keproba, markets that would then guarantee our SMEs, supply. I look at the successes through our Kenya Industrial Estates, the Kenya Industrial Research Development Institute and others in supporting our businesses around innovation and with funding. I look at having, working together with the other state departments towards ensuring that we have a critical answer to huge policy issues such as taxation. And I know we are on the right path. We are going to get there. The challenge of COVID has hit hard. It didn't hit us only. If I told you the stories of our neighboring countries, it would be appalling. But we must create solutions for ourselves. Thank you very much, Abby, for having us.
Thank you for making time to join us on the front row. Very solid comments and interesting sentiments from my panelists joining me here on the front row. And to all that are watching back at home, thank you for your comments, for your questions. We do appreciate your valued feedback. And indeed, the country is not yet out of the woods. A lot of work still needs to be done, even as the economy tries to get back to its feet. A lot of expectations out there from the public and the private sector on just how can the government drive a very robust post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Well, this has been the Front Row with me, Abby Agina. Let's keep engaging on our social media handles, and thank you once again. Until next time, have a lovely viewing as we progress.